5 things that I have experienced and that I see as a therapist for narcissistic abuse survivors. These are typically mother to daughter, although that's not a hard and fast rule. With mother to daughter, I see all 5. Mother to son, I might see 2 or 3 of these things going on, but 100% of the time, mother to daughter. So ready, let's get into it, shall we? Number 1, withholding of photographs. I have never seen a photograph of myself in my mother's arms as a baby. I've never seen a photograph of me under the age of, I would say, 1.5 years, probably 2 years old. The photographs that my mother did have of me, she refused to give me. My eldest daughter was in a brief relationship with her. She went no contact on her own, with no influence from me. Asked her for mementos of mine, photographs and things, because she wanted to see what I looked like and she wanted those things, and my mother would make up excuses. So the withholding of photographs is extremely common. Some of us are left with 0. I have a handful of photographs, including some from my birthday party that my aunt threw for me, because my mother never gave me a birthday party, or any sort of party for that matter. In fact, that's another thing. That would be like number 6, sabotaging our special events and things like that. But I'm not doing that one today, even though I kind of just threw it in there. Anyway, she gave me photographs of my birthday party. I'm not in any of them. And I've seen pictures of me from the birthday party. And who knows where those are. They're probably burned in a dumpster fire that she set of all of my childhood things. Nothing would surprise me at all. Anyway, that's a very common thing that narcissistic mothers do to their children, not gender specific actually. Number 2, cleaning. Using cleaning as a way to torture their children in some way, shape, or form. So for me specifically, my mother was very detail oriented about the cleaning thing. My closet had to be color coded. My shirts were folded in a very flat, particular way, also in colors, the whole 9 yards. When nobody was in the house, my mother would come into my room, wrinkle her shirt over, and I mean, I'm little, I'm like 9, 10, 11 years old. She'd wrinkle a shirt over. I'd see her do it. She'd look at me and proceed to rip everything out of the closet and shred me like a rabid dog. So a scene right out of Mommy Dearest. This is a pretty common one. Not all of the mothers do this in the case of my clients, but they do use cleaning somehow, the way that they want you to clean. So if I had something to do, somewhere to be, or like I had homework or something like that, that would be the day that my mother would pick to give me assignments to clean. And we had a housekeeper. So the housekeeper lived with us, was only off 1 day a week. So this was a very particular thing that my mother did that was also completely unnecessary. She would have me vacuum. And the vacuuming couldn't just be vacuuming, you know, so like I'm 9, 10 years old and the lines have to be straight. Everything has to be exactly like next to each other, no spaces. And then I would have to figure out how to back out of the room with the vacuum, pull the cord and not damage it, because there could not be any footprints on the carpet after I was done. And she would inspect it. She'd have me sweep the floors and then inspect behind all the doors. She would have me Ajax the bathroom. And then she would do that test to see if there was any chalkiness left behind. Real Cinderella kind of stuff. And a lot of times they will take this cleaning moment, which is a very ordinary thing to have kids do chores, and make it look like or sound like, oh, you're just doing chores kind of thing. And they would use that cleaning moment to sabotage something that you needed to do or were given permission to do. And definitely something you would be excited for, like going to the park with your friends and they come to the door and they're like, are you ready? And no, you have to clean these things up, sort of thing would unfold. So that's number 2. Number 3, chopping off their daughter's hair in particular. This is a more mother to daughter thing. My mother, at every opportunity, I mean, I had boy cuts, I had Dorothy Hamill haircut, she would say, oh, your hair's stringy and it's thin and that's why we're doing it. There was a period I lived with my grandparents and my hair was actually growing out. And the first thing she did when she came to visit me was took me and chopped off all my hair. This was constant. They do this because they're threatened by their female children. They don't want to not be the center of attention. They do this for emotional power and control. They don't want that child to develop any self-esteem that they're not giving them. And we all know with narcissistic parents, they give their children zero self-esteem. In fact, they completely destroy it. So the hair cutting thing is a really, really big one that I see across the board. Number 4, medical care or lack thereof. The way that they handle their children when their children are ill. They won't take care of them. They will treat that child like the child is faking or it's not that big of a deal. And it doesn't matter what the illness is. So when I was in school one day, I had a blinding migraine headache for the first time ever. I didn't know what was happening. The room was all blurry. I saw stripes. And I was in band class, as a matter of fact. So the band teacher noticed something was wrong with me and immediately took me to the office. I didn't know what it was. Nobody said migraine. Nobody told me anything. My mother shows up and, theatrically walks me to the car. I've inconvenienced her day, so she's pissed. But in front of everyone, she's Mother of the Year. And by the way, my mother didn't work. My mother scammed and she married money. So it wasn't like I was inconveniencing some important meeting. Not that that would be okay, but just to give a little bit more of a big picture that my mother didn't have any other job other than being a mom, which she failed miserably. Anyway, she took me to the doctor's office and we sat in the reception area, and she had done this before when I had a stomach ache and I was throwing up. So it wasn't one of my anxious stomach aches. It was one where the school did not want to keep me in school. And we're sitting out there in the outer office waiting for the doctor, supposedly. And she's going, the doctor is going to tell me if you're faking. And if you're faking, we have a big problem. And she would threaten me and the whole thing, and do you feel better now, and blah, blah, blah. And eventually I would cave, especially, with the stomach ache thing, the blinding headache thing, the migraine. I was having a little more difficulty caving because I was terrified. But eventually I was like, I'm fine now, everything's okay. I feel much better. I thought so, she would say. She would never go up to the receptionist to say we're leaving now or cancel the appointment. And of course I put 2 and 2 together eventually that there was no appointment. It was just her not wanting to provide me care for whatever reason. If I had the flu or something like that, she'd make me stay in bed and not let me watch TV or play with anything. I would just have to lay there being punished for being sick because I was an inconvenience. So the denial of medical care, the mistreatment of their children when their children are sick, because they aren't allowed to have any attention, right? Ever. So that was a big one for my mother, is the medical care thing. Number 5, sabotage. They will sabotage anything that you're good at, anything that you're excelling in. They will sabotage your special events, your birthday parties, anything that you're looking forward to. They are the crusher of the formation of dreams, let alone being able to achieve them. There's 2 with my mother that are very specific. And by the way, this one is not gender specific at all. So out of all of my clients, there's a 5 out of 5 with mothers to daughters. With my clients who are men who had narcissistic mothers, it's about 3 out of 5. I rarely see the haircut thing with men, for example. In fact, I've never seen it with men at all. The haircut thing, maybe somebody out there. So if you've had the haircut thing and you're a guy, let us know, because I'm really curious about that. I do have more female clients than male clients, so maybe that's why I haven't seen that. Anyway, sabotage. So I ran away from home when I was 13 years old, and I ended up living on the streets. And at 17, I had a baby. Social services sent me back to my mother, the abuser. No questions asked. They just wanted to close my file. Back in the US at that time, if a minor had a child, the social services had to report it to the parent, or at least that's what I was told. I don't know that for a fact. So I get back home. And my mother cut my hair immediately. That happened. I get back home, and my mother is pressured into taking me to therapy. 2 sessions. We lasted 2 sessions. First therapy meeting, I'm in there, she's in there, she is smear campaigning me, she is eviscerating me. Marnie's been on the streets, she was 13, who knows what she's done. She's always been sneaky and a liar and the whole 9 yards. So about 15 minutes in, the therapist says, you can leave now, and assures me that anything that I say won't be shared with my mother and that whole thing. And I just sit there in silence. I'm humiliated, I'm degraded. I know that this woman knows how ugly and black and dark and damaged goods I am. All of those things, you know, my mother would tell me, you're just dark and damaged and ruined and only good for one thing and that whole thing. Now this therapist knows that about me. What am I going to say? She asked me questions. I'm shrugging my shoulders. I'm looking down at my shoes, at the floor, anything to try to disappear, which is everything I was trained to do by my mother. My mother picks me up, says nothing. Next therapy session, she drives me. I know everything you said last session. I know you talked about me. The therapist tells me everything. I knew I didn't say a word, yet I sat there and I was like, maybe I did. Maybe I did say something. My mother's saying so, it must be so. That session, I sat in silence. I don't know what the therapist did or didn't tell my mother, but my mother never brought me back. My mother told other people that, you know, I didn't want to go to therapy, that it was my fault. Another sabotage when I was trying to get my GED when I was 17. So I have a little baby, want to get my GED. I had my eye on nursing school at the time, and my mother agreed to watch my baby, who would have been about a month old at this point, maybe 2. And my stepfather was going to drive me to the center, which was about 20 minutes away from my mother's house, if you drove by car, not buses, right? I get to the house, and no, we can't take her. And my stepfather is confused, and he's trying to intervene. No, we can't do it. We can't do it. Thankfully, I had gotten to my mother's house super early, because I ended up with a Gray Coast stroller. I don't know if anybody out there is from the 80s, but this huge, heavy stroller, my big GED book, and my baby in tow, 3 buses. I went down to the center, didn't know if they'd let me take the test. I have a baby with me, and I was so fortunate that the test proctor decided to let me take the test, because he didn't have to. And he held my baby while I took the test, and yes, I passed. She tried to sabotage my education. Music, my dreams. I wanted to go to Juilliard as a little girl. That's all I ever wanted. I played flute, I played some other instruments that I taught myself. I was excelling in school, in music. This was my thing that I was really good at, that I knew I was good at, and I didn't need her to tell me I was or wasn't. Other people validated that for me, like when I would audition for things. So this was really important to me. It was a huge part of my identity. What did she do? She took me out of the school that I was in and ensured my next school had no music program. Sabotage. So that's number 5.